to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Yeah. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire.
That's Jim Morrison, the leader of the 60s cult rock group The Doors. And here is actor Val Kilmer, who plays Morrison in the new movie called The Doors from multiple Oscar-winning director Oliver Stone. The Doors is just one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Jim Morrison and the Doors left behind some classic rock and roll recordings, which I still love to listen to. But on the basis of the Doors, an ambitious new movie by Oliver Stone, the pleasure I get in listening to those songs is nothing compared to the pain that went into their making. The movie was shot in widescreen, and that's the way Stone wants you to see it here in these clips very effectively. It documents the brief life of Morrison and the Doors from their first appearance on the Los Angeles rock scene to their superstardom, and then all of the bad vibes as Morrison turned into a heavy-duty drunk and drug abuser. Toward the end, every concert was a cliffhanger. Would Jim be able to get it together, or would he self-destruct?
And he said, well, you better get out of there, or what? And he started pushing me. Yeah, so I started pushing back.
In the beginning, it wasn't like that, as Morrison, a dreamy Venice Beach hippie, first talked about forming a band with Ray Manzarek, a keyboard player, portrayed here by Kyle MacLachlan.
Sides are being chosen. Everything's gonna play, man. The planet is screaming for change, Morrison. We gotta make the mix.
Oliver Stone came of age in this world, and his movie does a brilliant job of recreating it in relationships like this one between Morrison and his companion Pam, played by Meg Ryan. Here you can see how Morrison's drugs have made all of his relationships problematical.
Ooh, it's just some low-grade acid, not heavy.
Oh, Jim. Oh, God, you know, I cooked the stuff.
Oh, baby, it's
and people are coming, you know?
It's amazing the way the movie recreates the Doors' concert scenes. They look like outtakes from a documentary that was shot at the time. The crowd scenes there have an amazing impact, and this is one of the most realistic-looking rock movies ever made. But sitting through the decline and fall of Jim Morrison is not a pleasant experience, and the last hour of The Doors is like spending several weeks trapped inside the party from hell. Drugs turned Morrison into a narcissistic, selfish, deceptive monster whose ego made life miserable for everyone around him. That creates a paradox. This is a brilliant movie about a person I would rather not have met. I have great admiration for many of the elements in the film, including Val Kilmer's heroic performance as Jim Morrison. He looks so much like Morrison that it's eerie, but he's also completely convincing in the role. I also like Kathleen Quinlan's work as a weird rock journalist who feeds Morrison's fantasies. And Oliver Stone's achievement in recreating this period of time, including the rock concerts, is astonishing. The Doors is a very well-made movie about some terrific music, but the misery of its hero makes it truly painful to watch.
You know, I didn't suffer that much, except in his relationship with the Pamela Corson character played by Meg Ryan, which I thought was, I guess, so unhappy that it wasn't really worth watching. But the rest of the picture is a musical experience, which is really what I think I took out of it. It was a pleasure to revisit the times. I felt like I was given a ticket back to the 60s, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being there, watching the music, seeing it created, seeing the spirit of the 60s recreated, the positive spirit of people taking chances. I thought I really thought it was a terrific film.
You've just given a wonderful review of the first 20 minutes of the film. What about what Jim Morrison goes through in this movie? His obsession with death, his completely sadistic and uncaring treatment of everyone around him, the way that they start reacting to him with passive-aggressive hatefulness, so that the passive-aggressive hate, so that the people in the band in the background who are playing while he's singing look at him as if they would like to kill him. What about the audience as he kept waiting for hours? What about the painful spectacle of him embarrassing himself in public while drunk and exposing himself? Is that the spirit of the 60s?
I don't think, well, you know what? People did awful things, sure. They were drug-influenced and drunk. And
but what about this guy? He was more than drug-influenced. He was on a complete death trip.
Well, okay, I saw that, but I enjoyed the music that was created during that period.
Well, then you should get the soundtrack album.
I did actually buy 2 records from the film. I enjoyed the film thoroughly. I'm not exactly sure what we're arguing about here. We both liked the movie. I think
I didn't. I'm not going to give it thumbs up. No.
You call his performance brilliant?
Yes.
Yeah. And the recreation of the rock music brilliant? And you're not going to recommend that people see this?
I think it's a pretty unpleasant experience.
But you wouldn't want them to see the brilliant things in the film?
Listen to the music. I admired a lot of the things in this movie, but the problem is, by the end of the film, it's really a downer. I mean, in a bad way.
But wait a second. There are people. It's documented the guy died at the age of 27,
That's right?
Okay, so obviously he told the story straight. Is the story's unhappy straight? We've been arguing for years that we want pictures not to be...
It goes on and on, Gene. It goes on and on and on. After a while, you just want to cover your eyes. You just don't want to see this guy destroying himself and those around him any longer. It's too painful. If you have any empathy at all, you want to draw a cloak of mercy over this scene.
Well, actually, it sounds like you got deeply, deeply involved in the picture, as did I.
Well, more deeply than you, apparently. You like the music.
Oh, I liked the music, and I cared about the performance. Val Kilmer was great. Listen, obviously, I think this movie is going to trigger a lot of interest in the music of the Doors and in Jim Morrison. There are many tapes and laserdiscs available for showcasing their performances. I think the best is the Doors live at the Hollywood Bowl, a complete record of their 4th of July concert in 1968. It's the only complete concert ever filmed of the band, and Morrison is in top form right at the start with the song When the Music's Over, with its signature long-format run-on hypnotic quality so typical of the Doors.
When the music's over, turn up the light, turn up the light, turn up the light. Hey, hey.
Also fascinating is a compilation tape called The Doors, live in Europe, also from 1968, when the band toured with the group, the Jefferson Airplane. Here, in the introduction to the tape, Airplane members Grace Slick and Paul Cantor talk about the Doors' place in rock music history.
They were one of the precursors of both the punk, the new wave, and the current, what would you call it, heavy metal, perhaps, explosion.
The tape also contains the group's performance of the great song Love Me Two Times.
Love me 2 times, I'm gone away.
That's the best of the Doors. The worst is a compilation record called The Doors, Dance on Fire, which does a miserable job of illustrating the songs in a pre-MTV music video style, here ruining the fine Doors classic, People Are Strange.
Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down.
So the Hollywood Bowl concert and the European tour tapes or discs are the ones to get. And I had a couple of reactions to seeing this real group in action. First is just how close Val Kilmer came to capturing the real Jim Morrison. It is a remarkable performance. And second, just how much I really appreciate the way this group expanded the running time of the typical rock music song. They did help liberate the music. And I want to make one more point on Val Kilmer's performance. It's very likely that Jeremy Irons will win as Best Actor for Reversal of Fortune, playing the real Klaus von Bülow. Yeah. This is an even better piece of work, because not only is he playing a real character, and convincingly, he's singing like him. It's an amazing achievement.
Yeah, they have seamless tracks in which you hear Jim Morrison and you hear Val Kilmer and you don't know who you're listening to. You know, when I'm reviewing this movie, I'm kind of caught in the straitjacket of this ridiculous thumbs up, thumbs down business, because I can't recommend the experience. It was just too painful. Yet at the same time, I do, and that's the kind of issue that you were confused by. I do admire what Jim Morrison did. I admire a lot of what Oliver Stone did. What they have not created is a film that was very pleasant to sit through.
But Roger, I mean, you're doing the very thing that you have knocked the audience for, which is wanting sweet times.
Don't want it. Don't want it.
Come on, Roger.
No.
This is hard. The fact that I mean, I'm sitting there. Oliver Stone's probably watching, saying, "I got Ebert." That's exactly the reaction I wanted.
We had a totally different reaction, because in everything you've said in your entire review, you apparently had a good time. You enjoyed the music. You loved. You didn't. I don't think you really connected.
Felt pain.
You didn't. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Not the way
I don't think you really felt the pain the way I did of what this guy is going through. It's almost like if you're visiting a sick ward, your doctor are doing a great job. You don't necessarily want to spend 2.5 hours there watching people die.
But wait a second. You like the picture Awakenings, right? It's about people who are sick. I mean, what's the problem with showing someone
That's a rhetorical argument. Coming
No,
up
it's a
later
good
in
argument.
the show, Scott Glenn stages a rodeo comeback, and my heroes have always been cowboys.
Hal, are you going to take him with you?
A brother and sister argue about who will take care of their aging father if he doesn't go to live in a nursing home, and that argument is the backbone of a new movie named My Heroes Have Always Been Cowboys, about a veteran rodeo rider who returns to the town he grew up in and discovers that some of his biggest challenges are on the home front. The movie stars Scott Glenn as a rodeo bull rider who's determined to make his comeback in a big $100,000 competition. Ben Johnson plays his father, and Kate Capshaw is the hometown girlfriend he's falling in love with all over again.
Can't leave me and then walk back into town and just pick up where you left off. There's been a lot of living going on.
Ben Johnson, one of the great all-time Western character actors, has some wonderful moments in this movie.
I knew there was only one way to stop him, but I didn't have time. Because there was 2,000 pounds of hide and horns running at me.
There was not much about this movie that I couldn't predict, usually with great accuracy. It follows the tried and true lines of comeback movies like Rocky, and after the first 15 minutes of setup and the fact that they mentioned in a poster that $100,000 competition, I knew just exactly who was going to be riding in it. There weren't a whole lot of surprises in this movie. There were, however, a few things I liked. One of them was the strength and conviction of Scott Glenn, an underrated actor who you may recently have seen as the FBI agent in The Silence of the Lambs. Another thing I liked was the quiet authority of Ben Johnson, who can't say a word that doesn't sound sincere. Tess Harper had the thankless role of being the angry sister and did as good a job as possible, I guess, with overwritten dialogue, but the movie's big theme was right out of the file drawer, and I get restless when I know where a movie is headed better than the movie does.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the movie was in trouble when I enjoyed the rodeo sequences more than the domestic scenes.
Yeah,
I mean, the rodeo sequences had some action. I hadn't seen that stuff quite that way before. I thought they did a good job with that, even with the time distortion. I permit that in a movie. But the domestic stuff was really routine, and as you say, no surprises. Coming up next, Iron and Silk, a most unusual film about a young American's journey into China where he becomes sort of a real-life karate kid.
I'd read that he was as hard as his right hand, which he developed by punching an iron plate 1,000 times.
If you want to learn something, you should always find the best teacher.
That's writer Mark Salzman playing himself in the movie Iron and Silk, the true story of his trip to China, where he went to teach English in the early 1980s, but ended up being as much a student as a teacher, learning about the martial arts from a master instructor. There's a genuine freshness to this story in Salzman's easygoing, open-hearted manner and in the surprising charm of his Chinese students.
First, we add cold dishes such as marinated pig stomach and sea slugs.
That's a great scene. Iron and Silk isn't just a goody-goody portrait of modern China. Salzman finds a girlfriend, but their affection is not easily exchanged. Vivian Wu plays the friend.
I've already been criticized for liking Western things.
What's wrong with Western things? I thought that was all right in China now.
It's not as free as it seems.
There's sort of a prescience there when her statement, it's not as free as it seems. This film was completed just before the crackdown in Tiananmen Square. I really enjoyed Iron and Silk, however. It's a rare travelogue of somebody else's trip that is worth taking with them. Salzman is one of the most engaging presences I've seen in a film in a long time. So natural, so unassuming, so un-movie-like. Iron and Silk is going to make its way slowly around the country, and it won't have a big ad budget to grab your attention, but I think Iron and Silk is definitely worth seeing.
I enjoyed it too. I really enjoyed the fact that you really felt these experiences were happening. There was no manipulation. There's no twisting the plot to have an artificial happy ending. Boy doesn't necessarily have to get girl. Boy doesn't necessarily have to win a big karate match at the end of the movie as it would in a Hollywood formula. This is about an outsider going into a culture and finding that it's really more than he bargained for and enjoying that, and I did too.
Yeah, the sense of discovery with this actor who is obviously an amateur. I mean, he's an amateur presence, so you don't know, he doesn't seem to do things movie-like, and so there's this whole surprise element that carries you through the picture, which is the drive of this travel.
It's very original in the fact that he wrote the book the movie is based on. I don't think that's been done before, where not very often anywhere a guy plays himself. Coming up next, Superstar, The Life and Times of Andy Warhol. Look at the mask behind the man.
We laughed out loud because we didn't know he was so much like.
Puzzling figures of our times. An artist whose work transformed the way we look at ordinary objects and the way we answer the question, what is art? Sometimes his work seemed like an enormous put-on, but it wouldn't go away, and it grew in stature even as he claimed to agree with his critics that it was all just superficial. In a new documentary named Superstar, The Life and Times of Andy Warhol, Chuck Workman assembled countless Warhol images to show how omnipresent the artist was and how influential.
Eddie, do you think that pop art has sort of reached the point where it's becoming repetitious now?
Yes.
Interviewing Warhol was an exercise in masochism for journalists who usually wound up supplying their own answers. Warhol's fame was fueled in no small part by the steady stream of celebrities who in the 60s drifted in and out of the endless party held at the Factory, Warhol's studio.
It was fierce. It was like some kind of festival, just to go there and be there.
Warhol was not only a painter and a sculptor, but also a magazine publisher and a film director, and yet he never seemed to really put an effort into anything.
I could stare at the camera for 10 minutes without blinking.
That, of course, is the image Andy Warhol liked to project as the passive bystander with barely enough energy to keep his eyes open. One of his friends even says in the film he doubts that Andy had a sex life at all because he didn't have the strength for one. The overwhelming impression left by this documentary, however, is of a man of prodigious energy, creating a flood of images and events that helped to shape his times. The film is an always absorbing mosaic of interviews, artworks, and documentary footage, all swirling about Warhol's cool detachment. He comes across as enigmatic as the Mona Lisa, and he may fascinate and frustrate people almost as long.
Which is why I wanted to see a little bit more journalism here. I think that this picture doesn't lay a glove on Warhol. I mean, it doesn't tell me anything that you wouldn't roughly know, although when you show the material, just showing the material and seeing it up on a big movie screen, that in itself says something about the art that he created, and that's valuable, just to see it again. If you can't, you know, there was a big exhibition of his work not too long ago. If you didn't go to that, this is one way, I suppose. But I think just that... Did you learn anything new about him, Roger?
See, this is what's fascinating about the film to me, Gene. You're responding to Warhol the way he wanted people to respond to him. And he was so consistent for so many years, for 30 years, in never expressing sharp feelings and never saying anything very revealing. Even when you talk to his friends, they didn't really know who was really there.
Unfortunately, you know what?
And that, it seems to me that that's what he wanted to get. I don't know if there is anything behind the facade.
Well, let me tell you something.
There must be, but you're not going to get it in a movie, and you're maybe never ever going to get it.
Oh, I think you can. There's easy journalism to be done on him, and I don't think that the picture did it. So we split on that. Coming up next, our video pick of the week, an unfairly maligned film directed by Jack Nicholson's sequel to Roman Polanski's Chinatown. And this is a picture that sank like a rock at the box office when it first came out, but both Roger and I gave it a strong thumbs up, enjoying the complexity of its plot, with Nicholson directing himself in the role of Detective Jake Gittes, searching here for a lost love.
You tell me what the hell you think's going on here, and I'll tell you if I think you're right.
I enjoyed The Two Jakes much more because I saw Chinatown the night before I saw The Two Jakes, and that's the way I recommend you screen it. First Chinatown one night, then The Two Jakes the next. You'll see two good movies, and the rarity of watching the same actor grow and change over a 14-year period. And now let's recap our reactions to the movies we reviewed on this show. A sharp split on The Doors. I thought it was a terrific portrayal of the man who created remarkable music. Roger agrees, thought Val Kilmer's performance was brilliant, but was disturbed by the pain Jim Morrison caused himself and others. 2 thumbs down for My Heroes Have Always Been Cowboys, a predictable rodeo melodrama with Scott Glenn. 2 thumbs up for the engaging Iron and Silk, Mark Salzman's China Journey. And a split vote on the Andy Warhol film Superstar. Roger enjoyed the documentary. I didn't learn anything new about Warhol, and I have a feeling we're going to be talking about the Doors movie for the rest of the year, because, boy, the experience you had, I wouldn't want to keep people from seeing that at all.
Well, rather than renew our bloody fisticuffs, I would just like to say that Iron and Silk, in the meantime, is probably going to disappear into the mist of time if we don't point out this is a movie to look for and go see. It's
immediately, because it'll disappear.
Because it'll be gone if you don't run for it. And we can argue about other things later. That's it for this week. Next week we'll be back with Hardway, starring Michael J. Fox as an actor who wants to learn how to be a cop, and James Woods as the cop who teaches him. And also New Jack City, an urban thriller starring Wesley Snipes and Judd Nelson. That's next week, and until then...
Tell anybody?